Good evening and welcome to the Cabinet meeting for Thursday the 8th of February 2024. Welcome the Cabinet and also welcome in attendance Councillor Webb and Councillor Cara Nielsen. Good evening to you too. Do you have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Councillor Schrader.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? Just the usual standing item for those people blessed with also being county councillors. Thank you. Do I have your permission to confirm the minutes and sign the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 18th of January 2024? Thank you very much. We move to the Cabinet Work Programme on page 7 of the agenda. Councillor Webb, anything you wanted to add to that?
Thank you, Chair. Just the Works Programme. I note the Pitsea Diagnostic Centre updates has been deferred till next month, which I hope is not an indication of any time lapses going forward on this. It's just a matter of concern, was to note.
Don't be concerned, Councillor Webb. I wouldn't want you to be sort of concerned and stressing. It's all in order and will be coming in due course. It's just really, as you know, with all of these sort of things, there is sometimes, you know, hiccups and legal stuff and all the sort of things you have to do on due diligence to make sure that we get the job right. So there's nothing to fret about and it will be forthcoming. Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Leader. I was just going to add to that. I mean, it's only just past planning, so I think it would be more suspect if it was being discussed tonight, because that's, you know, making an assumption, you know, and overriding that due diligence that it had to go through.
Well said, Councillor Rimmer. Moving on to item 5, the Corporate Plan Refresh and Draft Budget, General Fund and HRA. This is on pages 9 to 286 of your agenda. It's a joint presentation from myself and Councillor Sullivan, of which Councillor Sullivan will be majoring on it because he is the man that does the budget. So I'm just going to talk very briefly on the principle behind where we are with merging, if you like, the corporate plan and the budget setting process. The presentation of the corporate plan alongside the budget is actually a bit of a milestone for us. It starts to actually bring priority setting and resource allocation together. And this actually follows on from the recommendation of the 2021 LGA peer review, and it's in line with best practice. And as we have continuously said from time and time again, it is our intention and intent to have a well-run and financially responsible council, and one that actually the public can feel confident in is not going to go bankrupt or go bonkers mental like some of our neighbouring authorities and some of the authorities nationally. It's the with it's sorry, my microphone, is that better? Yeah, it just dropped off. Yeah, it's the later stage of the journey that we began in 2021 to bring resources in line with priorities, and it also continues the aspiration that we have to have a corporate plan which is strategic and not just a one-year constantly changing plan, so that we can actually start to have a deeper and longer strategy. It allows officers to do forward planning. It gives confidence to our partners that there is a direction of travel and a trajectory for the council. And that actually all plays into ensuring that we remain a well-run authority, that it's fiscally sound, it's within the current constraints, just as ambitious, but just working a little bit differently to how we have in the past. We've still got our work to do, and we're very clear that in the future our priorities that we set will dictate how our resources are allocated. The corporate plan updates that adopted by the Council last May. It refreshes the key deliverables, replacing those we've completed, such as Pitsea Swimming Pool, which Councillor Rimmer was one of the key drivers of, which opened last November, and which we will be reflected in the annual report to full Council in March. The budget of the MTFS set the allocation of the Council resources in the context of the delivery of the corporate plan priorities. In this regard, both the priority setting process and the budget setting process are inextricably linked with each other, needing to be aware of the opportunities and limitations of one another. I will now hand to Councillor Sullivan, who will talk to the meat of the matter, which is the budget itself.
Thank you, Chairman. Despite the well-publicised pressures currently afflicting local government, the budget being presented demonstrates that Basildon Council is not in danger of issuing a Section 114 notice or needing to make wholesale closures of services. This despite a second successive year of unforeseen extreme financial pressures. The General Fund has seen an increase in the cost of homelessness of £1.5 million over its original budget. The cost of wages has increased by £800,000 over budget, and the costs of the new cinema have also grown by £600,000, and these are just three amongst several other pressures. Even a £600,000 fall in utility costs should be viewed in the context of them still being £800,000 higher than in 2022. The government has recognised the financial difficulties being experienced by local government and provided additional funding. Nevertheless, difficult decisions as a Conservative administration were required to keep the council financially viable and to continue to provide an ambitious programme of investment in the borough. And this has been detailed in the report. We are therefore proposing to increase council tax by 2.98%. Fees and charges will rise by 8.7%, except where it will be detrimental to usage, and in addition we are also freezing burial costs. HRA rents will increase by 7.7% per the permitted formula. As explained in the report and demonstrated by graphics, even a slightly smaller increase will be insufficient to keep the HRA sustainable and be able to withstand any further unexpected financial shocks beyond the additional £11 million for Brook House, as well as implement an extensive capital programme and the safe and sound estates regeneration. We recognise the additional cost the rent increase will impose on those who do not have rent paid for them via housing benefit, and will therefore increase the discretionary housing payment fund by £50,000, which is an increase also of 7.7% to dovetail with the rent increase. In the context of the general financial circumstance as well as the financial pressures specific to Basildon Council, I can therefore justify the proposed increases detailed in the recommendations, which will enable the Council to remain both financially viable and able to continue with this administration's plans to improve the borough. In addition, not only is this year's budget balanced, but the projected budget deficits for the following 2 years, so long as there are no further unforeseen financial shocks, can be realistically managed. Finally, in completing what has again been a challenging budget process, I would like to thank officers for their hard work and sacrifices over the course of the last few months. So, Mr. Chairman, is there any comments or questions, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Aside from the external financial pressures affecting the authority, and at a time of prevailing cost of living crisis where many families in the borough are left struggling, just think what more could have been done to improve the lives of residents with improved and additional services, with the monies allocated developing a new local plan. Subsequent to withdrawing the previous plan, which of course now is leaving us without a 5-year land supply and open to speculative development. This, along with contested, refused planning decisions being won on appeal, at huge and increasing costs to the public purse. This really draws me now to current impact of committing large amounts of money in the name of the waste recycling, which continues to be a huge concern for residents across the borough, with many still reporting they have not received their wheeled bins or recycling bags. But I want to ask the Cabinet Member for the Environment, Carbon Reduction and Waste Enforcement, since admitting the recycling bags supplied are not fit for purpose and are to be replaced with more robust bags, which should have been originally supplied, where is the money coming from to pay for these replacement bags, and at what cost? This is likely to be considerably more than the original 632k that I've seen listed, which has already been spent, which in effect is a waste of money. I would conjecture that perhaps this is an opportunity to review the existing arrangements and to improve, with perhaps introducing weekly collections and also considering an offensive waste collection at the same time. Referring also to another section of the budget, there is, I notice, a 600k procurement for the new cinema operator. I wonder if that could be clarified as to what is entailed with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Does anybody wish to respond to that? There's a horde of people want to respond, so Councillor Sullivan first.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, there wasn't too much actually directly budget related there. I mean, I would just add, with regard to the local plan, we did that from the principle of defending the green belt, which is something that, for those with quite long memories or have been on the council quite a while, we stuck to our guns with regard to the Dale Farm site clearance, and that again was due to us standing our ground and defending the principle green belt. And I think we think that is something that is of great importance to this borough and as well as of interest to a lot of the people of the borough as well. So these are the reasons that, that we took with regard to local plan, and also of course to ensure that we're not overrun by high-rise buildings, which was another thing that we managed to avoid from the previous administration. With regard to the weekly waste collection, well, of course, if anyone wants to recommend that, then first of all, they will have to say how they will meet the recycling targets of 65% that we have set out to achieve, which really can't be done unless we drive down the amount of non-recyclable waste, and of course the additional approximate £1.5 million cost a year that it would entail to have weekly non-recyclable collections. So, in which case we will await the alternative budget with interest. And could I just ask my officer colleague, Mr. Sparks, would you be able to mention about the cinema in regard to the detail on that? Oh, was you? Oh, beg your pardon. Okay, that was all for me, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Leader. I was just going to say, obviously, in regard to the procurement exercise, that obviously we have announced that View are the new operator. We've made public their planning application to change the signage to remove the two Empire Cinema signs and put up one View sign that's out there in the public domain. And the operator, in terms of View, are quite happy and come out with their statement about that. We will be coming back to Cabinet with the exact terms and conditions, and that will have you'll have precise numbers there in terms of the effect going forward for the budget. But obviously, we have to wait until all of the heads of terms being signed off by everybody. So patience a little, and we'll be there. I just wanted to say I've got to admire your dexterity with hat wearing, Councillor Webb, to be on the planning committee and be voting down applications that then lost at appeal based on defending the green belt, and then to be complaining about the money that it costs to defend the decisions that you made. But there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. Councillor Blake.
Yeah, I'll just make a couple of comments as I was asked to speak on this. Well, it's doing quite well so far. We've got a cost so far of 675,000. We've now got a cost of 630,000 that it cost us. I'm just wondering what the next cost is going to come in back from the opposition. I don't know what the cost is going to be. I know the last time we went out to procurement and there was a slight error, we had to go out again. There was quite a large reduction in the actual cost. So I don't know what it's going to be, and I haven't said we were going to replace. I said we will be getting rid of these bags. It might not necessarily be with another bag. There could be other options we could look at. So you've never heard me say that we would actually play bag for bag. We're going to look at options across the borough, which is important. And again, as I said at the scrutiny committee the other day, it's about £2.4 to £4 million savings So it's going to be really interesting where you sort of try and find these sort of savings coming along. But more importantly, as Councillor Sullivan said, it's the recycling targets that we've also got to hit. And we are. They have really increased, but we have found that the bags are not fit for purpose, and we're dealing with it. We could bury our heads in the sand, but we're not. We're being responsible and acting accordingly, and we will continue to do that. We'll get this right for our members of the public. There's an awful lot of people out there who are doing their very best regarding recycling, but having issues with the bags flying around. We know that. So those people have said, we really do support the idea of what you're trying to achieve, but the bag's not fit for purpose. We've listened to them and we're acting on it. That's what you call being responsible, and that's what we'll continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. I mean, as the subject is the budget, I'm going to talk from a budgetary point of view, and it is to do with waste. I mean, the bottom line is, with the current recycling that we had previously, it had a negative impact on the finances of the council. We had a negative outturn with regard to the finances. By shifting to getting our recycling up to 65%, my understanding is that creates a negative outflow to a positive income, as far as the council is concerned. And that is quite substantial, a positive income. Now, there's been a lot of conflation with regards to, you know, the waste and the changes to waste and everything else. This talk about a weekly collection. If you are recycling and using the waste streams correctly, there is very little that goes into the residual waste that doesn't warrant a weekly collection. Now, if people want to go back to having black sacks and throwing their food and throwing it all around, and we don't do anything at all with regard to landfill, then what I'd like to hear from the people that think that's the right way to go is which services they want us to cut. Because for every time that somebody throws out a black bag that is not actually got the appropriate waste in it, it actually is costing the council money, which means it's costing the resident money, and it's costing the council taxpayers' purse money. We've laboured on about the parlour states of finances for councils in general. We are doing our very, very best to ensure that we run a tight ship, that we have a fiscally sound council, and that we balance our books. And to do that, we've made some tough decisions that maybe in hindsight should have been made 3, 4, maybe even 5 years ago, but it was constantly being put off because it was politically, for whichever party was in power, inexpedient for them to actually follow it through. We've bitten the bullet and actually taken it through. So the question is, ultimately, do we want to get this right and make sure we've got a fit-for-purpose waste collection service which is contributing a positive inflow of money to the council and allowing us to keep resources? Or do we want to just trammel along getting it wrong and actually start to have conversations which are even tougher about which community centres are going to close, which leisure centres are going to close, where we're going to actually have to cut costs elsewhere, which is not what we want to do. We want to actually provide the very best services we can to the borough, and this is one of the streams that we're going about in order to achieve that. On that, the recommendation is on page 10. All those in favour? Thank you, members. That is unanimous. We move on to item 6, which is the Billericay and Wickford Business Improvement Update, and this is the incredibly brilliant Councillor Headley.
Thank you. The report starts on page 297, but if I can just, if you can bear with me, I'll just give you the headline. After the excitement of the last item, this may sound a bit mundane, but it really is a great opportunity for particularly businesses in Billericay and in Wickford. So the purpose of the report is to provide the Cabinet with an update on the progress of the 2 bids. And this includes the overview of the key aspects of the Business Improvement District, brackets England, close brackets, Regulations 2004. So this is all covered in primary legislation. The Wickford and Billericay bid ballot will take place following the local elections in May, and this report will ensure that the Council can progress the matter accordingly. In Billericay, the town team has recently signed off their feasibility study, and the Wickford town team are just undertaking further consultation with the goal of signing off their feasibility as soon as is practicable. If I can draw Cabinet members' attention to the recommendations At this point, the council will need to scrutinise the bids, the Business Improvement District bids, to ensure nothing in the business plan conflicts with council policy. That should be fairly straightforward. The council will also need to provide a statement indicating that the local authority will not use the availability of the levy in a successful bid area to disproportionately make adjustments to its own expenditure in the bid area. So we cannot use the levy, which is, you'll find the detail of the levy on page 293. That money has to be reinvested through the Business Improvement District. It's not for this council to procure some of that finance. Once the ballot is launched, it's quite likely that the council, as a key landowner and or occupier in both towns, will have a vote, and that is covered in the matters for consideration under the recommendation. If the ballot is successful, the council would be responsible for collecting the levy on behalf of the bid body, and the council being able to charge a fee for undertaking this work. The likely fees chargeable for conducting this work are set out in the report, together with the potential financial impact of the increased rates charges. So the businesses will be supporting their own areas. If both bids are successful at ballot, this could raise the capacity of the local business community to work together on enhancing their towns and securing up to around £1 million additional investment for each of the two towns over the next 5 years. I'm happy to take questions at that point, but this really is a good news story if we can get it across the line. I'm reasonably confident that both bids will be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Headley. Councillor Webb?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, Chair. What will businesses reasonably expect in the form of qualitative and quantitative data for the 30k feasibility study and business plan? I don't know if there's any more information that can be provided. How would businesses benefit from that? And also, is there any thoughts about an expectation or any thoughts around bids being introduced into Pitsea and perhaps ultimately into Langdon?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Webb, is it? Yeah. Taking the last question first, we will learn a great deal from the Billericay and Wickford bids, and it would be useful to examine how the outcome of those two bids, and Pitsea would be the next candidate that I would suggest could benefit from such a bid. Langdon is more difficult, primarily because it would need to dovetail with the regeneration of the original shopping centre. So I think there's an element of regeneration of that area before we could consider I don't know who would form a town team in Langdon at the moment. Pitsea, yes, I think particularly with the planning application that went through last night, which you've already asked a question on, that could conceivably be the next one following these two bids. In terms of the benefit, and both of the town teams that are mentioned in the report have been actively engaged with officers at all levels of examination of the bids. We were very fortunate in Billericay that one of the businesses in Billericay, their manager had been through a successful bid process. I believe it was in Saffron Walden. So we were ahead of the game in that we had expertise on the town team, which also included, by the way, Billericay Town Council. So there was some very detailed examination of what these bids could bring to the town. And really the ballot will be a barometer of how those businesses, because they will be getting charged the levy, and they will need to feel comfortable that the bid is of value to their town. I hope that answers your question.
Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Leader. No, it's an excellent report by my colleague, Councillor Headley, and the officer team, and they've done some sterling work in this respect. I just reflect on our time at the scrutiny meeting in Wickford with Wickford residents and businesses there, and how they were calling out for improvements in Wickford, and that they were excited about this prospect, and you could see how the Wickford bid will make a difference. I look forward to the concept of a PITSI bid process being developed as well. In the future, I know we're talking about Leindon, and quite rightly, but in the future I'd also like considered sort of more rural bids as well, and like a Bowers Gifford bid for some of the more rural villages, and how we conceptually boost business to people in Bowers Gifford, because there's lots of shops and businesses in Bowers that people only find about if they actually visit for other purposes. And I think it would be good to actually start attracting people there to actually shop and use the businesses there. But these are the sort of initiatives that are fantastic that we're driving the way forward on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. Just want to touch on Councillor Webb's question. I thank Councillor Webb for asking it, and I do hope that now under his leadership we're seeing a sea change from the Labour group and their stance and attitude to business, because they've got a very sad history with their engagement with business in this borough. I am reminded of a previous leader that during COVID was trying to get places shut down and was going in personally to get them closed. I'm also very much aware that when the Alliance took over a couple of years ago, the first thing they did was kicked business off their role within the committee that we had for business engagement, because they just at that time didn't understand business. And we have always been incredibly proactive in wanting to engage with business and being engaging with. And in that regard, I want to thank Mr. Sims for the exceptional work that he has done in producing this. It requires more work than people necessarily appreciate when they just look at a report, when you've got to wade through the different conflicting desires of business. You've got to understand those businesses, you've got to talk their language, you've got to give them confidence that this is something that's not going to waste their time, because in the real world, time is money, and you know and it affects them. So they have to have faith and that it's something that's going to actually deliver a tangible return for them. And with Councillor Headley at the helm as well, what we've done is demonstrated that. And this is yet another example of this administration's commitment to business in general, and to the general message that with us, Basildon will always be open for new businesses and existing businesses, and we want to see them thrive, because by thriving, they grow our economy, they make our lives better for residents, and they enable us to actually continue the overarching aims of this administration. So from my point of view, a great thank you to Mr. Sims and Councillor Headley for the hard work done on this, and I wish them every success in its continuance. The recommendation is on page 288. All those in favour? That is carried. Thank you very much. We move to item 7, which is the proposed extension to the leisure contract, which is on page 299 of the agenda. My glasses I need. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Henry.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Leader. Background. So, this report seeks Cabinet approval to extend the term of the current leisure contracts for Basildon Sporting Village, Eversley Leisure Centre and Wickford Swim and Fitness Centre that the Council has with Sports and Leisure Management Limited, or SLM, for an additional 5 years until 2041. The reasons for seeking this extension is that the contracts are performing well and delivering to a high standard against the service requirements following the business interruption during and following the COVID-19 pandemic. To ensure continued service delivery and best value for the Council, for the contract term. The extension will mitigate against any fluctuations in financial resources and will support SLM to operate under a better business model. It will also provide SLM with the opportunity to invest in a longer-term commitment with the Council, which will provide ongoing reassurance for future investments in the facilities and service, and it will also allow for a suitable time frame for SLM to repay and support the grant that was provided by the Council over the COVID period without negatively impacting on the centre's performance or facilities, users and the community. Examples of recent key achievements for the Leisure Centre is that a brand new 25-metre swimming pool is open and flourishing at the Eversley Leisure Centre. The Eversley swimming lesson sales are strong, with 106 new swimmers signed up for the scheme, helping more residents learn a vital life skill in a fun and safe environment where they live. There's a new generation of pool pod has recently also been installed at Eversley Leisure Centre. Hockey pitches at Basildon Sporting Village has had significant investment with a new modern surface, and we're in discussion with, I think this is pronounced, Paddle Stars, to introduce paddle tennis courts at the Basildon Sporting Village, introducing a new sport to the borough. We've recently been awarded £124,000 for the introduction of PV solar panels to the Wickford Swim and Fitness Centre through the Swimming Pool Support Fund managed by Sport England. And this will mean that all of our swimming pools will now have PV solar panels across the leisure centres. Over the three centres, the median increase of attendance is 27.7. This was seen last year, and this is set to increase again this year based on the figures today. These feed into our corporate plan ambitions. The leisure contracts contribute to achieving the following corporate plan ambitions. In terms of people, we want people to be home to healthy and active local communities able to support themselves and each other. We'll work with partners to reduce health inequality in the borough. We'll work to provide and support a range of leisure and community facilities and projects to improve residents' health and well-being. Basildon Borough Council continues to supply high-quality facilities through Basildon Sporting Village, Wickford Swim and Fitness Centre and Eversley Leisure Centre, and continues to deliver both the Basildon Sporting Village contract and other leisure contract effectively through SLM. The sites provide multiple opportunities for residents to stay fit, have healthy lifestyles, and be active in a variety of both indoor and outdoor facilities and activities. This encourages both adults and young people to engage in a healthier lifestyle that incorporates physical activity. The recommendations can be found on page 300, and they are that approval is granted for the proposed extension of the term of the current leisure contracts by a further 5 years until 2041, for the reasons set out in the report, and that the authority is delegated to the Director of Community Environment in consultation with the Head of Legal and Democracy to agree the terms of the contract extension. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Just one thing I'd like to say about it is everyone active is effectively meeting its requirements and needs for the borough's residents, and recognise that extending the contract period will allow sports and leisure management to focus on more longer-term, cost-efficient planning around providing the facilities and services residents will expect in the future. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Rimmer.
I have to welcome the change of tone from the leader of the Labour group on this, because the previous leader of the Labour group was actually claiming that everyone active were going to be bust, and that actually officers and cabinet members had to reassure staff members that this was not the case, and we're transparent. This is here. You acknowledge that. You are working with us, and the attitude of the previous leader was shocking, but welcome the change. On Councillor Henry's comments, I'm absolutely over the moon with how the Pitsea swimming pool has turned out. It has become a real beacon in Pitsea for leisure. It's going to work with its big brother in terms of the Basildon Sporting Village as being a feeder pool in many ways to that, because younger kids can learn to swim there and become able to use the larger Olympic length pool in Basildon. But it's really enhanced the facility. A lot of residents have contacted me and said they're enjoying the aqua aerobics and really loving it. Unfortunately, I didn't have the honour of being the first councillor in the pool. I believe the deputy mayor had that honour, but it's a much loved facility, and it's working out well. And everyone active should be commended for being great partners of the council, and I'll commend the officers for all their hard work on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. Did you want to wind up, Councillor Henry?
Thank you, Leader. There's not a lot else to say other than to thank my colleagues for their comments, and in particular Councillor Webb for his remarks on that. I think the long and short of it is this loan could absolutely be repaid in the remaining time that we have. As Councillor Webb stipulates, we have a very, very good relationship. They're producing some great things. We have them back here through scrutiny. But one of the things we don't want to do is we don't want to pile pressure onto a business that then only passes on to our residents. This is, I believe, a sensible outcome for them and for us. It's a very good relationship. There's never a blind eye. It's a challenging relationship that we continue to work very, very hard to nurture. So I recommend the recommendations are on page 300. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. And it builds upon our focus on responding to businesses of all sorts and being business-centric in the way we deal with them. So thank you again for the hard work that I know that you have put in onto this and will continue to put on this. The recommendation is on page 300. All those in favour? Thank you very much, members. We then move to item 8, the extension of the grounds maintenance contract. This is on page 309 to 337 of your agenda packs. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Leader. Significant works have taken place and understand the future requirements of the Council's ground maintenance service, incorporating the views of residents, elected members and the Council's wider commitments. Following the works, Scrutiny Place Committee has approved the creation of an officer and member working group to review the specification for the Council's ground maintenance service and potential future delivery models to take into account biodiversity and the climate change objectives, amongst others. That committee has met twice now from the members group. It's a cross-party group. It's working extremely well. We're giving quite a few suggestions. It actually came forward to the Place Scrutiny Committee only this week, and really it got a massive endorsement, purely and simply, and I think this went with the purely on the basis that we are actually working together on this. All parties, apart from one of the independents, decided not to stand on it, but it's because we're working together that we're coming up with some good ideas, non-political, challenging questions, and coming up with some great ideas, as I say. So what we actually do need, a 2-year extension to the 7-year contract that we could extend it to, and some of the rationale behind that is now with our officers and the Adi Verdi, we're actually working closer together and more united than we've been in many a year. And so we want to ask them if they can possibly, within the grounds of the contract we've got at the moment, if we ask them to do something that's normally slightly outside of the contract, but can they fit it in, then they're going to do it. They're going to see what it works, if it works, whatnot. If it works, then we can probably incorporate that into the actual process that we actually go out to tender. Because let's be honest, 7 years ago, this contract was fit for purpose. Climate change has changed so much since then, as we all know. And so we need to make sure that we've got the contract that's very versatile and be able to have that flexibility within the contract. What that will cost, that's going to be down to members at the end of the day. Do we want extra cuts? Do we want more this, that, the other? We even had one suggestion that they wanted the grass to be collected after a cut. Just if you want to triple, quadruple the cost of the service, then that's the way to go. So there are some ideas that are great in theory, but it's not in practice. So in order to do this, a 2-year contract available. The extension are sought to be implemented. The revised specification was reviewed by the place, as I said to you earlier. Permission is sought to implement an extension to the existing contract at a cost of 1.6 million per annum, which is 3.2 million over the proposed extension period. That's what I recommend. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I must admit, personally, is just questionable really around whether we're achieving value for money here. Although I respect the fact that obviously there's a working group that's working closely together to get round some of the problems with Ivy Verde that's occurred, certainly over the last year. Going into the report, for example, the performance and service satisfaction appears to be improving, but sporadic over the year. And also referencing page 337, it does suggest that some improvements have been seen and further improvements are planned. But have we got more information of what those planned improvements are that would make the service more efficient for residents?
I think I said a little bit earlier on, there's a hell of a lot closer working relationship between our officers and Ivy Verde on this at an early stage now. So I think that's where the improvements are being seen, the closer working relationship. But the officers might want to go into a little bit more detail as to the specifications of that.
Thank you, Councillor. I think some of the key things which we've learned from the last couple of the two summers we've had over the last 2 years have been very different in terms of weather conditions. As Councillor Blake correctly puts through, working closely with the contractor, we've done an additional, a slightly harsher winter prune, not the winter just gone, the winter before that, which helped to cut back on some of the additional growth. Winter prune just gone, we worked in a slightly different way, and we worked in the parks first and then moved the areas around, but we were also moving that forward into the calendar to mean we can start grass cutting slightly earlier this year. So it's things like that. There are some non-material changes we can make within the contract which will help us in terms of deployment on the ground, but they won't meet some of the biodiversity, climate change and other aspirations of the council moving forward, which is why the decision was taken and endorsed by Play Scrutiny to review the specification and come back to a future Cabinet meeting with what that might look like.
Councillor Headley.
Thank you, Leader. I draw members' attention to the penultimate paragraph on page 310, and we are being asked to provide an extension to the existing arrangements for 2 years. So it's a contract extension for 2 years, and it goes on to say, in order to allow for the revised specification to be drafted. I can't believe in procurement terms it takes 2 years to draw up a new specification and understand what service you want. So I would hope that working with the contractor, our officers come to an early understanding of the improved service we need, meeting all those biodiversity and climate change requirements, and the sooner we can get there. I mean, there's quite a large sum attached to this extension already for service as is. So I think, you know, I would advocate that we work very closely with this contractor during the first 12 months to get that specification completely buttoned up and costed, so that future service in this area can be improved to the extent where we are all happy with the grounds maintenance contract. So I think we need our officers to work very closely with this contractor, and I may be wrong, but if we're going to change the specification to that degree, at some point do we need to go out to competitive tender? If you can clarify that.
Couldn't argue on anything you said there, because Councillor Headley. Yes, we would have to go out to that. But as I say, we've already seen the improvements working with them, and it is a case of not just going out for, well, this is the spec that we want, that we're going to actually go out and try that first of all with what we've got now, so that we actually get it right. Because say, if we start going out with what we think we want without trying it, we could end up with the same situation we're in now, 7 years down the line.
Andrew.
Thank you, Leader. So I think the other thing to bear in mind as well is through the member working group, there are a number of ways of delivering grounds maintenance services as well, all of which we've been through with the member working group. Members have taken the decision to narrow that down, so there are different timescales around re-procurement versus different delivery models in terms of how that service may be provided in the future, in-house, LATCO and so on, so that we're working through each of those, and this 2 years allows us the time to explore each of those fully without rushing into the next solution for this service without due care and consideration of what that might be.
Thank you. I see those speakers. I think the key thing is, and I want to thank Councillor Webb, the working group has been something that has been pretty functional and, you know, across all parties, and I think that's something to be applauded, because this does affect all of our residents, and we're all just as committed to that. It's a shame that Councillor Smith isn't here tonight to give an independent view, but this is the third meeting he's missed, so I guess he's got other things that are more important, and I'm sure we'll hear his thoughts at some point in due course. Did you want to wind up, Councillor Blake?
Yeah, all I'll say is what I hope with this group, when we come to make some final decisions, that we are all united. Because unfortunately, with the waste management group that we actually had, we was all united in the rooms when we was behind closed doors, and when we've gone out to implement some of the implications we've been asked to do and done it as an administration, we've then been criticised for it. We wouldn't have done it that way, we wouldn't have done it this way. But the reality of it is that what was agreed at the waste management working group. So I'm just hoping that we can be even more united in this one than we were in that one. Other than that, quite happy to go to the vote.
The recommendation is on page 309. All those in favour? Thank you, members. We then move on to item 9, which is on page 339 of your agenda, and this again is Councillor Blake, the Councillor Blake show this evening.
Basildon Council has a contract with Countrywide Grounds Maintenance Limited for the provision of weed spraying of Basildon assets since April 2020. This applies to the council's land only, and free sprays are applied during peak growing months, which are subject to regular off inspection to assure quality. The contractor is deemed to be performing, and so the 2-year available and procured contract extension is sought to be enacted at a cost of £214,694 for both years.
Short and to the point. Councillor Webb?
Thank you, Chair. Just as short, actually. No issues identified with this report, so thank you.
Thank you. Don't see any members to speak, so I will say one thing. I was at a meeting this morning with South Essex Councils, and on the agenda there was a drive of looking to see how we can be either not merging services, but sharing services, working jointly together and everything else. And Councillor Bentley, leader of Essex Council, quite eloquently said, you know, there are other things we could do, and he's very, very keen to have that conversation. So maybe he wants to reinvigorate the conversation we had about the way that they do the weeds and the weeds contract. So this is an ideal opportunity, I think, to springboard and re-engage Essex County Council on that issue. Did you want to wind up, Councillor Blake? Oh, sorry, Councillor Headley.
Yeah, it's going to sound like a crack record, but I do feel that the recommendations, I thought we'd agreed that it would always be in consultation with the appropriate cabinet member. That does give us oversight, particularly of procurement of contracts or extensions to contracts. As the recommendation stands, we're blindsided to that.
Thank you for picking that up, Councillor Headley. I'm glad you did. So I will, unless you want to formally move an amendment to the recommendations. Do you want to do it? Okay, I move that delegated to the Director of Community Involvement in consultation with the Head of Legal and Democracy and the appropriate cabinet member. Seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's the amendment moved. So we move to the substantive on page 339. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you. We move on to item 10, which is the exclusion of public and press. There is no public, there is no press, but we still need to vote to exclude them. And the reason that we would be excluding them, and also turning off the webcast for all those people tuned in at home, is that the nature of the business, that if members of the public and press were present during consideration of the items, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined by paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A, the Local Government Act 1972, and the public interest in maintaining this exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. All those in favour of excluding the non-existent public and press? That's it. Thank you very much. Out you go. And we will turn off the webcast. Good night to all those at home, and